And we're going to share the screen. And everybody can see my how to stay positive when negative things happen, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, so welcome everyone. It's been great to chat to those of you that are here that I can see in person, and also there's a few of you that I know are on the phone. Thanks for calling in, and we're going to get started. So I don't know about you, but a lot of negative things seem to happen in the world around us all the time. And it's not that the whole world is negative, but because there's so much negativity going on in the world, it can sometimes feel like just everything is falling apart and we get worried and stressed and so forth. So I'm really excited to share everything that I have for you today. And I want to make a comment right from the very beginning. If you know my work and know that I'm all about joy and happiness and fun and light and laughter, that the initial part of this webinar may not be very lighthearted and so forth because we're talking about negativity. So just know that it's not going to stay that way. Okay, I promise that by the time we're finished, you'll feel more uplifted. You'll have some positive ideas of ways of things to do that you can start to do immediately. So just know, and you can always look away. Okay, I know that I've looked at some photographs of things that I never even saw before because I chose literally not to view them at the time that they were happening, but we'll get into that. Okay, again, we'd like to have a nice clear recording, so please, if you have any background noise, you can go to the bottom of your Zoom screen and you'll be able to hit the mute button. And you can always hit the talk to me in the chat. I think I can see you, or I can move it over. Actually, I can't see the chat, so I'll have to move that later. But if you have questions, just unmute yourself. Or if there's different times you can, and I ask for any comments, which I will. Please feel free to share. In fact, right now, if you can make sure you can take notes if you like, I have no problem with that. You'll also get a recording of this. But I would like you to have a sheet of paper so that you can, we're gonna do something a little later where you're gonna need a piece of paper. Okay, so pen and paper will be good for later. But for right now, let's jump in. And this is what you're going to learn on this call. And that is to take back control. Because many times we feel powerless when the negativity is in our lives and we don't know what to do. It's like we feel like there's nothing that we can do. So that's one of the first things. The second is we get caught in a negative thinking loop. And this is it's a kind of like a natural thing for humans. So we're going to find I think as you learn about it, and you'll be able to see, oh, I'm caught up in this. And then once awareness kicks in, that's often the first step. And then you're able to start to change and get yourself unstuck. And the third thing that you'll learn, and actually there's several of them, is practical tips to shift your focus from the negative to the positive. And this I mean not just when there's a world disaster or a terrorist attack like happened in Orlando a few weeks ago, but I'm also referring to those times when our own negative stuff, those negative beliefs or those limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves, like I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I don't believe in myself, any of those things that can stop us in our tracks. Those two, we get caught in a negative loop with those. And so that will be, these tools will also help with that. Okay, now some of you may know me, some of you may not, so I'm just going to say, yeah, there's me being silly out at I don't know if Mark will recognize that area. It's in Berkeley, in the lower part of the marina, and just playing with a friend one day. We were shooting photographs, and so we're just being silly. But my name is Catherine Walters, and I am the Joy Coach, and I do hypnosis and Reiki and a number of other energy tools and modalities to help people shift from the negative to the positive, which is the big one, simply because I know what it's like to be severely depressed. And I know what it's like to be incredibly joyful. And I'm not manic depressive, but it's just that, or bipolar or any of that, but it's just, it was a learned habit. It was something that I, was modeled in my family. And I've learned how to shift that and shift being stressed all the time and worried and so forth. My mother was a model worrier. And so those are the things that some of the things I've been able to shift in my own life. So a little bit about me. Okay, jumping forward. Let's talk about negativity. Okay, I know you'd rather not, but that's why we're here. And it's something that's obviously of interest to all of us, right? Okay. Well, negativity, it's like you can either put in the chat box, or although I can't see it, I don't think so, maybe not. Maybe just shout out do you ever find that you focus on negative things more than the positive? Anybody?
Mm-hmm.
I used to more than I do now. I've been working on it.
Okay, you've been working on it though, Mark. Yeah. But the thing is, it's like it's a natural thing for human beings, because when something negative happens, whether it's an earthquake or a saber-toothed tiger or something like that, we're programmed in our brains to think of it as being an imminent danger. And what kicks in then is fight or flight. So it's normal for us to automatically go to that negative point and for it to stick there, because that's our very survival. And when we're in that negative place, it's really quite challenging for us to feel, to see and hear happy things or positive things. We have to actually put our attention and our focus on it, because it takes more effort, it takes more work than staying in that negative loop. And when we're in that negative loop, I put that we can feel helpless or full of despair, that the fear just doesn't go away, or that we're in constant worry. And it's not just for ourselves, but it's often for our families, for our children. We can get, when things happen like that's actually an aftershot of the shootings in Orlando, another city where I used to live. And we don't focus on the lights and the softness of the night sky. No, what we see is that panic and that sadness and that fear, like what's going to happen next? How could someone do that? And all these questions start to roll around in our minds, okay? Now, the next thing that's also kind of important here is, and I want to scroll down here a little bit. How many of you watch the news? Anybody watch the news?
That's something that I used to do and I stopped.
Excellent.
I only listen to it on the public radio now.
Okay, good. All right. Well, the thing is now, we have access to the news channels 24 hours a day, right? 7 days a week. There's always news. And the thing is, there's updates on the news. So we're getting, and it's not just the main channels that are listed there, but it's the radio, it's everywhere. And it makes it so difficult for us to get away from, because they're actually, you can appreciate the news. They're trying to make their sponsors and their so forth. They're really, their advertisers want to have their share of the marketplace and they want high ratings. But the piece is it has a huge impact on all of us. And whether you're sensitive or not, it still has a big impact on us. Okay, so why? Where there's a lot of hype. They make it so compelling that you just have to know. You need the latest, but it also keeps us on edge. It keeps us excited and agitated. It's like the news. It's like the media create drama, and the more and more dramatic they can make it, the more and more they can hook us all into it. And when they do that, we can't stop thinking about it. Remember, many moons ago, I actually have a master's in telecommunications, and we had to do these news programs and get all this hype and get all these negative and as practice things. And I did it because it was interesting, because I really wanted to get into children's television. However, it got to be so much that I walked away from it, because I knew it just that too much hype, it was that so much of that drama just really was unsettling for me. And I couldn't sleep. I couldn't turn my brain off. I couldn't relax. And I was just always keyed up all the time. But that was me. So it has a really strong impact on all of us. Okay. And we'll get into more of some details on that in just a bit. Okay. What else here do we have? Let's go into this one, which I think this is a key piece. So you can start to see what happens in this negative loop. And I'll do it on a global level, let's say, and also on a personal level. So let's start with, and I'm going to put my cursor here on negative thoughts, okay? And I live in Oakland. This is an area where potentially there could be an earthquake at any time, right? Okay, so I could think, oh, we haven't had an earthquake in a really long time, and we're probably going to have an earthquake soon, and what if it's a big one? And what if I better have my flashlight near my bed, and I better have an emergency plan, and I better be able to make sure I can climb out the window because I only have one door, and maybe I can't get out my door. And you can see how one negative thought, and I don't even have these scripted. I didn't even practice those. I just pulled that out of my head. That leads to more. And I don't know if you notice, but I can feel in my own body, my heart rate's faster, my voice is faster. I'm like all kind of edged up and moving, getting roll along. Can you hear that? You feel that? And you may even notice that too. So that anxiety starts to get built up. And then you start with, I wonder if Shiva will be out. And then I'm going to, oh gosh, how am I going to take care of him? That's my cat. And who am I going to call my family? And what if I don't have my cell phone and I don't have my purse and blah, 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 blah. And so the anxiety just builds up and up and up. And we get into this negative loop and we just go around and around and around. The thing is, with the subconscious mind, and when this negative loop happens and we go around and around and around, what happens with any trail? It becomes a road, right? And same thing in our brains, in our subconscious mind. These loops start to become ingrained, and they get into deeper patterns, and they get rutted and deeper, and so it becomes our go-to because it's the neural pathway, it's the channel that our brain is used to following, and so it's the automatic, it's the go-to, it's the default, and we haven't even done anything. We just had one little negative thought. Okay. What if it's on a personal level? Money's always a big thing. So let's start worrying about money. Okay. What are some negative thoughts we could have? I barely have enough money to pay the bills. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. Oh, we're on survival, and I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet. And then you can see, you just go on from one thought. And then again, right here, I can feel it. You feel it in your body, in your belly, in your solar plexus. You can feel it in your heart rate, in your voice, in your energy. And you start to condense, start to shrink, and the worry is there, and you can't turn it off. Okay? That's that negative loop we've got stuck in. Sound familiar to anybody? In a comment, yeah, I see Mark. I see you shaking your heads. Yes. So for the folks I can see, yes. I think we're in this loop. But now you know that there's a loop that you're in, and the more you're aware of that, you can start to stop it. And that's literally all you have to do is say stop. It's like I wrote a couple weeks ago about being on a new train, where when you're on one train, you're going the wrong way. What do? You're on a train or a bus, you just get off and go on another one. Well, it's the same thing here when you're on a negative loop. Instead of, you just stop it, and then you go to a new train, or you go start on a new train of thought, like a positive thought. Like I have an abundance of money, or I have money in my checking account and money in my savings account. More money is coming my way. And you just start believing and focusing on the positive, and it will start to replace that over time. Now, one of the things I'd like you to do in our conversation today, or in this webinar, is to just stay open to the positive. And I know that's not always hard to do because, as I said, we live in a negative world. We're going to go into some slides that are kind of like in just a little bit. But this program is different. Because I know probably many of you have tried different programs, maybe not, and that's okay. But it gets frustrating when things like Orlando happen and shootings there or whatever happens. It's sometimes really hard to stay positive. And then when you get certain triggers that we have, whether if you're tired, like for myself, if I'm tired and maybe I haven't eaten several hours, and somebody criticizes me or looks at me the wrong way or whatever. I mean, if I'm really being sensitive or moody or whatever, that can spiral me down into the negative in, a little bit, or at least it used to be able to do that in a very short amount of time. Now, not so much, because I'm aware of what my triggers are, or more aware of them, and of my patterns, and I'm able to shift out of it. So just stay open to the positive, and so that we can start to clear these old tapes, so that instead of feeling powerless, you have the power to take them and to move forward. Okay, let me scroll it down here a little bit so I can see here. I'm not missing anything. Okay, so before we're gonna remember that piece of paper that I wanted you to have. Could you bring it out and have it handy? And I'm going to give you an option, and the people that are actually live on the call, you can make comments on it in a moment. I might say that we're going to do an exercise, or I could call it an activity. Now, which would you rather do, an exercise or an activity? Rubina, Mark, neither one of you want to share? Anybody that's listening on the call?
I guess an activity.
Okay.
I would say activity as well.
Okay. Awesome.
Activity.
Okay, awesome. All right, great. Why? Because when we think of the word we think of the word exercise, it has a slightly negative connotation, doesn't it? We might think back to, we had to do exercises when we were in PE class, when we were in high school or elementary school or something, like a whole bunch of push-ups, or we had to swim laps, or we had to run a mile or whatever. It sounded like a lot of work because it was exercise and we had to do it. Where when you think about an activity, it's, you're curious. It sounds kind of like fun, like you can have an activity after school, like being part of a yearbook club or in a play. So it has more of a fun notion to it. And so just look there at the choice of the words and how even our words reflect the positive and the negative, okay? So there are many words that it's much better to use the habit. Like, I'll give you another example. How many of you, do you ever use the word hard? It's hard for me to do this. It's hard for me to learn that. It's hard for me to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, we do sometimes, right? Oh, that's hard for me, we say. Or it's hard for me to memorize, or it's hard for me to remember. It's hard for me to remember people's names. That's a common one you hear, right? And I've always said for years and years, from forever really, that it's easy for me to remember people's names. But notice the word I use. I use it as easy. And I've learned tricks so that I can remember people's names quite easily. So hard and easy is another one of those matches with words. And that's just an extra side tip I'm kind of throwing in here. Okay, let's play with our activity. Play again is a choice, because if I said, let's work on this, work and play, there's a huge difference, okay? So I believe in home play, not homework. Okay, let's play with our activity. So what I'd like you to do is you can fold the paper in half or just make 2 columns or whatever, and write on the left side the negative things, and on the positive, on the right side the positive things. If you're driving or doing something else at the time and are on the phone line and can't do this, you can think of these in your head, okay? You don't have to write them down. Ginny, you can just think of them. So in the last few days, what are some negative things that pop in for you? What happened, whether in the world or in your own life, that you might consider to be negative? They weren't as desirable. Just write some down. Somebody might have criticized you. Somebody might have not shown up or picked you up when they were supposed to, or you didn't get it. Like a check in the mail you expected to get, or just anything that was a negative. Write as many as you can. Okay, and then when you're ready, switch to positive things. What are some positive things that have shown up for you in the last few days? Somebody complimented you. The traffic flowed, or you got a great parking place right in front of the grocery store. Or you slept really well last night. Or you feel fantastic. Or you have plans for the 4th of July you're really excited about. Okay. So how about we pause right where you are, and I'd like you to look at your list and just count up and see which one has more, the negative or the positive.
Mine are the same.
Why am I not surprised?
I mean, I only had two on each column because I couldn't really do as many things. But,
Okay, that's okay. How about you, Mubina?
Mine was the same. I had 3 on each side.
Okay, but tell me this, which one was easier to write, the negative list or the positive? Which came to you faster?
Positive.
Okay,
I'd say they were equal for me, about, pretty much equal, yeah.
okay. And that's fine. And that just shows me that those of you that are here right now are really have done a lot of work on yourselves, which is awesome. And you've started to process this so much so that you're more balanced already. But for the general public, negative things would come faster. And negative things that they'd have more listed in the negative column than they would in the positive column. Okay, and if you think about yourself maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago or something like that, what do you think? How do you think you would be? Would it be the same as now?
No, the negative would be longer.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably,
Yeah. See, that's
even 4 years ago would have been more for me. Yes.
okay. So you're both admitting, and I know the people that are on the phone would say the same thing, in that you've been doing a lot of work on yourselves, and so now you're much more balanced. However, for many of us, that wasn't the case. So this is just, but it isn't. It's a really kind of a fun activity to see, like, wow, look at the progress that you've made. Okay, look at the growth you've already made. And the one thing I want you to keep in mind is that positive things, because we're going to come back to that in a little bit. But right now, let's jump into some more content. And this is kind of like a timeline through my life in this sense, and I don't even like to look at this, to be quite honest. So I'll look up at the little green dot and see you rather than seeing everything that's on the photos. But I can remember when I was a little girl and going to a parochial school. It was a Friday afternoon. I'm not quite sure what grade I was in. I didn't bother to do the math. But at any rate, President Kennedy was shot. And the principal came on the PA system and told we had to stop what we were doing and say the rosary. And then about, 45 minutes to an hour later, she came back on again and told us that President Kennedy was dead. And I remember those next 4 or 5 days when at the time there were only 3 main channels, and maybe there was a public TV station, but all that was on the news, not 24 hours a day, but because it wasn't 24 hours at that time, but the only thing that was on the news was everything about President Kennedy and what was going to be happening when he was at the Lincoln Memorial, and people could go and view the casket, parade, and the Washington Monument, and just the whole piece of the burial at Arlington and the salute and all of this. It was like one of those times where I can still see all of that. And it made such an impression on me. And also, of course, with our culture. And like at that point, I think is where we, in a way, started with becoming so almost like media excited that, that the media could do all this, that we could see all this. And literally the announcers, broadcasters would say that we are viewing history in the making. And they made such a big deal of it. And it did have a huge impression on us. Then, as I got a little older, still, I don't know, probably in middle school grades or whatever, and the Vietnam War happened, a shot like the one that's there, I'd have to run out of the room for, because seeing kids or animals or families that were, being harmed and their lives were being so disrupted and infringed upon, and just everything happening in that war just made it so. The negativity of that was just really too much for me to handle. And I would literally go, even if I'd already had dinner, which I already had probably, I would go and get a second dessert. And I'd try to numb the fear, numb the worry with food. Okay, ended up I became overweight in elementary school later on. But, it was a part of that was because of this worry and fear and how to numb it out. Then when I was, the next one, we see the cover of the Time magazine, that was in the 80s when Krista McAuliffe and Sally Ride, or Krista as a teacher, was going up on the Challenger space shuttle. And I happened to be a school librarian at the time. And the kids were actually watching a live, launch. We had class TVs in all the classrooms, and they saw this destruction and this accident happen. And we had to use, the guidance counselor and our whole, all the faculty just really had to work together to help calm the children and help the parents know what to do to deal with this disaster. But it's not just wars and terrorist attacks like you can see 9/11 or the aftermath of, but it's also tsunamis like the one in Japan or Haiti when they've had earthquakes, and just, Sandy Hook, I pictured that earlier. These things happen and we just get overwhelmed by them and we don't know what to do. And so seeing all this negativity, it just really throws us off. So I made a promise to myself sometime, probably in the late, I'm going to actually shift up to another slide. I wasn't living in Oakland at the time yet, but I'm going to just shift it because that slide just bothers me. Any rate, it was around 1980, when I was in my deepest, darkest point of my depression, probably around 98, 99. And I realized, like you, Mark, I listened to public radio. Actually, the NPR came on as the rate clock radio to wake us up, and I just said, I can't listen to this anymore, and I'm not gonna pay attention to the news. We didn't watch the news anyway, but it's like I'm just not gonna pay attention to the news. And if I'm supposed to hear something, if it's that important, then universe, you're going to get that information to me somehow, some way. And I decided right then, and so I haven't had a television, since 99, and really haven't. Actually, I lie. I did have access to a television in the early 2000s till 2002. But even when 9/11 happened, and I was supposed to go meet a writing friend, and she called and we canceled. She said, "Turn on your TV," and I'm like, I'm not turning on my TV to watch that, because I knew what kind of an effect it would have on me. And so I didn't. And instead I did one of the tools that I'm going to share with you momentarily, and made a big difference in how I was able to cope with what happened in 9/11. And that negativity didn't throw me off as much as it did many of my coworkers and other people around me, because I simply chose not to watch all the replays and not to be involved in hearing all the hype, and chose to do something more positive at that time. Okay, so I mentioned I live in Oakland, and it's the third most dangerous city, or the city with the most crime in the it's in the top 20, but it's actually number 3 of the top 20. And you can see graffiti and horrible things like that, like on the sign of Oakland all the time. And I could focus on living in Oakland that way. Or I can focus and see Oakland as that beautiful city across the bay from San Francisco. I can, just drive down the street on my way to the gym. I can see the Golden Gate Bridge on a daily basis, and just see the bay, see the hills, and focus on the positivity that's here, and appreciate that. So it's all what we choose to do. It's how we choose to see things. But it started, and I think you can all see, and I have a feeling, and maybe I'll pause a moment to ask, but can you see how these worry thoughts and these fears and these patterns about not only with the media hype, but just being sensitive to negativity, how this starts very early, even in childhood? Yeah, I see Mark shaking his head. Any comments, or how did the photographs of those different events and others that I didn't even include, there's so many more that I could have included, how does that kind of stuff bother you guys?
Some of those images are so ingrained in us already that we don't even pay attention to them anymore. It's, you just take it for granted. So.
Exactly. Somebody else wants to say something. Somebody on a phone call, a 617? You can unmute yourself. No? Okay. But you're right, Mark. It does, we do become numb to it, or we numb ourselves in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through, retail therapy or any of the drugs or things that we use, or just being addicted to social media or whatever it is that we do to escape. Many people have found ways to do that because or they blip it out. For myself, finding these photographs was actually really the reason it was so hard, is because I hadn't seen these last two probably ever. And so it was a new thing, and I had to go look at, then I obviously had to look at a number of photographs before I chose those particular ones. And so the last week or so, I've seen more of this negative stuff than I have ever. So it was pretty interesting on that. Okay, so the question is, how can you stay positive when negative things happen? So this is where you might want to take some notes, because we'll share some things. And I bet you can guess what the number one thing is to do. Anybody want to take a risk here and guess what's the number one thing to try to stay positive?
Be grateful for what we.
Grateful's good. Go ahead. Okay, somebody said grateful. But actually, it's not the number one thing, but I listed it as one, is to limit your exposure to negative media. Okay, and there are some key times, but there are also some interesting statistics that I can share with you, or some facts from research studies. The first time one of the key times to limit our exposure to the media, and I'm not saying don't watch it or don't view it or whatever, don't listen to the radio, don't go on social media and get news or whatever. It's not that. It's just limit how much, and notice how is this affecting you, and then become aware, so that if you notice that you're glued to it, or that you have to see it, or that you've got to know the next piece, or if it's having an impact on you, then limit it, control it. So take back your control so it doesn't start taking you down into that negative loop. Okay, so first thing in the morning is when it's a good time to limit our exposure to negative media. Anybody want to guess why?
Well, I would say just because it's starting your day, and so whatever you start your day with is important.
It is. That's exactly what it is. So it seems pretty obvious, and we know these things, but it's about doing them. And so first thing in the morning, it's not a great idea. Just let's think of a scenario. Maybe you're listening to something that's happened across the world, and you find, you just get so upset about it, or maybe you react and you're angry, and then you go to start driving to work, and all of a sudden this anger comes out in road rage, and you're like, I never drive this way. What's going on with me? And it's just literally because it's carried over. Or maybe it's your morning where then you're angry, you're upset, and then you start, gossiping and talking to everybody at over the coffee machine or whatever, at work, or you want to snap somebody's head off when you're on the phone with a client. And so it's those kinds of things that start our day off wrong. The second time that's a really key time, and this is actually any time, but it's eating lunch or dinner, or at any meal, basically. Because there's a couple things that happen. One, this is from Dr. Howard Lewine of Harvard. He said that multitasking, like eating or working while watching television and being distracted, so we get distracted because we're not really focusing on what we're doing, which is basically eating, it can prompt us to eat more. And we already know that many of our culture is becoming more obese, and our children are more obese, or a percentage of them are more obese than they ever were before. And so we're seeing there's a correlation between children who snack and eat meals while watching television become less sensitive to their own fullness cues. And kids are usually really good about walking away and leaving a few bites left, or, just not. And here they're not. They're finishing everything. They're just eating. It's because they're less conscious of what they're eating. Okay, and it disturbs us. So it might affect our digestion, or we might eat more. So there's a whole circle there with eating. And also it's a time where we're not spending, if we have a family, it takes away from our opportunity to have connection time and family time over a meal. So we miss out on things, and instead what we're bringing is more negativity. Another time, which is actually probably a tricky one for many of us, is before bed, because it actually has been proven that if when we are stimulated by media, and I'm talking here about pretty much all technology, that it interferes with our production of melatonin. And so it suppresses that actually. And so, of course, that's going to affect sleep. It also keeps the brain alert, which makes it harder for us to settle down, which was what happened to me all the time. Still can if I'm not mindful of it. And it even impacts, it's really key, if at all possible, to not have technology in the bedroom. Funny, when I was researching, finding that photograph, there were so many photos of people with having technology in the bedroom, especially televisions. And there's those electronic rays that just really sort of stay in that space. And there we are trying to sleep, and it actually impacts us much more than we know. So and this is also for cell phones, because we like to keep them on our nightstands. But even if they're basically turned off, they have pings and whistles and little things that come in with calendars and updates and so forth, or maybe a text message. And whether we consciously hear it or not, our subconscious mind can hear it. So what this researchers recommend is that people turn off technology a half an hour to an hour before they go to bed. And they really say that includes television, and no television like an hour before. And what do we have? The late night news. So imagine this, you've just watched the 11 o'clock news, and then you turn it off at 11:30 and you try to fall asleep. Well, I don't know about you, but I have a feeling most of us probably couldn't fall asleep very quickly at that point in time, right? That's what can happen to us. So these are some more of the statistics or studies from this, and let me share them because they're really pretty meaningful. Let me get those. There was a doctor who wrote an article in Psychology Today. His name is Dr. Graham Davey, and he found that he expected, and he indeed did find that viewing negative items would have an impact on people. That news broadcasts are likely to affect people, and that the negative loop of staying in that negativity would make people sadder or more anxious, and that this would be exacerbated by the negativity in the news that they were watching. But what they didn't expect was that it actually made it worse, not only for people did worry and were more concerned about the negativity that was happening in the world that they witnessed, but it also exponentially exacerbated their personal concerns and their worries. So it had an impact not only on what was happening globally, but on impacting the amount that they were worrying about their own worries and their own concerns and anxieties. And so they were saying, he said that people are bombarded by this sensationalized negativity, and it does have genuine, real, and psychological effects. And Mark, going back to your piece where you said that when I showed the photos before, that you commented that it almost becomes like the norm, and that a man named James Clear commented that same thing, that it's so commonplace, so familiar to us that it's dangerously easy to consume low-quality information and convince yourself it's normal and good when it isn't helping you have a better life at all. So it has a big impact on us. So again, limit and you probably, I have a feeling you folks are already limiting your exposure to the negative media. But if you can do it even a little bit more, even just be more mindful, that'd be a great start. Okay, so another piece that's really kind of important. And this is what I did when I heard about 9/11, is I sent blessings and forgiveness. Okay, so I mentioned that I live in Oakland. We already know that. And there are a lot of sirens, I will be honest. And so, gosh, I don't know. I know how I did. I want to tell you this story. Some of you may know the author Carolyn Mace. And years ago, way back when I was severely depressed, I used to listen to her energy anatomy recordings. And she told this story one time of a woman who she was in a person was in a car accident. I don't know if they were a man or woman. I think it was a woman though. She was in a car accident and it was a really bad wreck. And she was sort of floating out of body above her car. And she noticed that a few cars behind her wrecked car, there was this beautiful beam of white light coming out of this car. So she floated down, when they were out of body and got closer to the car, and she heard that the woman in the car, the driver in the car, was praying for her, praying for whoever was in that wreck, that they would be well and safe. So I'll make a long story short. She, didn't die. She ended up being in the hospital for several months. And, when she recovered, though, while she was still out of body, she got the license plate number of the car. And when she was well enough, she took flowers to the woman who had prayed for her, thanking her for saving her life. And so that story just stuck with me because I thought, wow, there is something that we can do. So I programmed my subconscious mind that anytime I heard a siren from then on, I would stop a moment and I'd say a prayer. And it can be just simple like, Lord, please help them. God, please help them. Doesn't have to be a big deal. And I often will say it for all concerned, whether it's for whoever is having the emergency, whether it's a car accident or a heart attack or stroke or whatever, or it's something much more catastrophic, like a shooting or a holdout or whatever else. The other piece is I'll ask, especially with 9/11, is I'll add in forgiveness. It's like forgiving everyone involved in the incident. And that includes, it seems like a strange thing, and yet that's where real healing can happen, is when we're actually able to send blessings and just forgive them because, what happened in their life. We don't know what happened to them as children or at any time. So being able to offer forgiveness is a great healing process. In fact, if you notice the photograph there, that picture was taken a week before the shootings in Orlando. And it actually hits pretty close to home in the sense that for my family, I happen to be in this one place where I do get information about what's happening in the world is, an email or a Facebook feed or social media feed or the internet. But this one happened to be on Facebook. And I saw the daughter of one of my first cousins comment about her first cousin, that she was so sad that he'd been killed. And I'm like, going, whoa, wait a minute, what's this? Because this boy, Sean, was the stepson of one of my first cousins. So then I kept reading the Facebook feeds and found out that Sean had been killed by a gunman in the Circle K where he was working on the Gulf Coast of Florida. And, the family was just like devastated. Like he was just in his 20s, I believe, really positive, fun kid. And here this happened to him. And he's just had gotten his life really more together. And so this is after the police apprehended or in the process of apprehending the gunman. And so that's why that picture is there. But as soon as I heard that, even though this was part of my family, I said, send blessings to Judy and Sean and, everybody concerned, and also send forgiveness and blessings to that gunman for whatever reason why they had to do that. And then there was a sense of peace and calm because that's what I can offer. And I know in my yoga tradition, when we meditate, it was always taught that you didn't just meditate for yourself. That at the end of your meditation, you offer it to, and this is a prayer meditation, doesn't really matter, you offer it to your community, your city, your state, your country, the world, the climate, whatever, the dolphins in the water, it doesn't matter, but you offer it up to something greater. And I found like when we had Desert Storm or Iraq crisis, over and over, that I'm a woman. I'm not in the age to be in the military anymore. I couldn't go to war. I couldn't fight. But I could send my love. I could send blessings. And by doing that, it brings a sense of, it's a way that we can balance out the negative with the positive. So we're not hopeless anymore. We don't have to be filled with despair because we're making a contribution. We're doing something that we are doing what we can do. We are offering what we can to bring more peace and more love to the planet. And that's by giving our blessings and forgiveness. So I highly encourage you to do that. Okay. So anybody already do that? You already know to do that? Yeah, I see people shaking their heads and so forth. Great. Okay. Step number 3 is probably my favorite. And that's to shift your focus to the positive. And again, I'm going to go back to 9/11 and that laughter and humor. Well, I was a children's librarian at the time. And 9/11 happened on a Tuesday. And Wednesday afternoon, as I was picking up the books on the easy shelves, I was blown away by something. And that was all the picture books of the Dr. Seuss books were like basically gone. The S shelf, as we would say it, was empty. I went over to the easy readers with books like Green Eggs and Ham and that sort of thing. The easy reader books, they were all gone. I went to see the Captain Underpants books and some of the other fun books that I knew were like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. These books had in one day had walked off the shelves in mass numbers like we had never seen before. I brought it to the attention of, the other children's librarian and our pages and so forth, and we were amazed. We had never seen that happen. And I can remember saying, wow, the children or their parents or whoever, somebody was just absolutely brilliant in that they knew that what they needed to do, what these children needed after that horrific event was to laugh. And that would bring the healing. And it is so true. You probably have heard of Norm Cousins, who wrote the book, Laughter is the Best Medicine. And he was actually diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. And this is a number of years ago. And he just checked himself out of the hospital against his doctor's orders and went home. And he got movies and TV shows, comedies. He got books that were funny. He got joke books, and he made up jokes himself, and he read them. He said them out loud to himself. And for this whole month, he laughed at every waking moment. And one of his comments that he made was that he noticed that every time he laughed, his pain was eased. And I believe he actually did heal himself from that and then went on later to write the book. So it just shows the power of laughter and humor. Nature and beauty are another one, in that they're so key to whenever we're upset or there's something. Nature is, there are things that happen, of course, because nature does have the control when there's a flood or a tsunami or something. But when nature is peaceful and calm, it's one of the most beautiful places to be. And it restores us. It brings that serenity and that peace back to us and that feeling of optimism and joy and love and light that almost faster, except for perhaps gratitude, than anything else. So, and if Mark, you mentioned that you're an artist, so things of beauty also can, whether it's going to an art museum or creating art, or just going to someone's garden, it doesn't matter. It can be the simplest thing. I can remember when I was, again, as a children's librarian, and things were kind of negative in the room or whatever, all I had to do was look outside and maybe watch a bird drinking water from a puddle, or seeing the one of the trees blooming beautifully in the springtime and the sun shining on it, and that would immediately uplift my mood and help me feel more positive. So positive people, pets. There's a picture of Larry Shiva, who that little munchkin makes me laugh and laugh and laugh with all the silly things that he does. Or places. So if you know people in your life, maybe they're no longer friends anymore, or they're coworkers that you don't hang out with as much unless they're in a good mood, because negative people bring you down. They gossip, they complain, nothing's ever right. It's again, they're caught up into that negative loop, and you know that they can bring you down into that. And so instead of doing that, what you want to do is be able to stay uplifted and bring them up to your level. And you do that by some of these tools I'm mentioning here. And then the last one, which is so key, nothing shifts faster than gratitude. I like to do a gratitude list first thing in the morning before I get out of bed. And just, thank you for this and thank you for that and, whatever it is. And also if you remember that positive list that you made, at night before I go to bed, I write what I call my positive evidences down. And it can be anything. Like I got a parking place where I wanted, or my day, or just, it can be just about anything. But it's those positive things. My yoga class went well, or I had fun doing this, or we laughed through our hard circuits workout. We had a blast or something. It doesn't matter, whatever positive. But the more we focus on it, the positive, right before we go to bed, that helps the melatonin. It helps us relax. It helps us have good dreams so that we wake up in the morning, we feel refreshed and positive. Then you add on doing a gratitude list of what you're grateful for first thing in the morning. Can you see how your day can shift? And you can be in the positive very quickly, okay? I can remember a great being saying that gratitude is like M&Ms. You can't stop. Once you start with one, you can't stop. So you can remember that and move from there. Okay, so those are some of the tips that I have for you. And they're easy to use. They're portable. You can take them anywhere. You can do them anytime. You can start using them today. So I hope that they'll really support you in staying positive even when negative things are happening. But if what I've said today on this webinar has resonated with you, then I want to share something that I think is absolutely perfect for you. And it's a way for you to shift gears, which is basically what we want to do, from shifting from the negative to the positive. And I call it my 12 months of shifting from the negative to the positive and be more joyful too. And what it is you don't have to decide about this right now, so not to panic, just going to stay with me a little bit, is you get to work with me one-on-one for 30-minute coaching sessions, and we're able to support you in finding out where do you go down? Where does negativity, in whatever way, shape, or form it shows up for you? It might be a lack of abundance. It might be maybe it's self-doubt in your ability to put yourself out there as a dancer, as an artist, or, maybe you want to grow your business and it's just not moving. You don't know where you're stuck and there's some limiting belief, some piece that's holding you back. Then that's something that we could work on together and help you stay accountable and change your habits so that you can reach your goals. The other piece, which is a really key, is I record the session similar to what I'm doing right here on this webinar. In fact, I actually use Zoom. And I don't generally send people the video, but I send them the audio recording. And why that's important is, remember we talked about that rut where you get into that negative loop and you go around and around and that negative loop gets deeper? Well, in order to shift out of that, it takes repetition. Just as the repetition dug the groove deeper, it takes repetition. You can jolt it out initially. And like I know even for myself, sometimes I can jolt myself out for a little bit, but to stay out, it needs to have that repetition and the consistency. And that again is where, by listening to a positive recording either of your session or a segment of that session, where we would focus on what you needed to hear to believe in yourself, to move forward, to those positive beliefs that are specifically created for you, then you're able to move so much faster and shift the positive habits on a much deeper level more quickly. Although it still does take a good year because we have so many different things that we have no idea initially that they're even affecting us. But they're like dominoes. Once you start chunking one away, the others can fall down much more quickly. And the third is having that support. It was a couple of weeks ago, for whatever was happening in the universe, I was in a deep, dark place. And I'm going, what in the world? It just hit me like that. And so I used some of my tools, but it was different. It was very different. So I used gratitude. I used appreciation. I was in nature. All of it worked. But the next morning I woke up and I was like down in like blog again. And I'm like going, what's going on? So I again used different tools that time and got to the bottom of it. But had I not been able to shift that, then that would have been where I would have written to one of my coaches and said, hey, I'm in this dark doo-doo place. I need help here. And so that's why I give people unlimited email support or text support, so that we don't have to stay in that dark place. We don't have to even go down there. It's like when you start to recognize, you can ask the question or get help immediately, and then you can move out of it so much more quickly, because it's our birthright to be joyful. It's our birthright to be happy and filled with love and appreciation for ourselves and everyone in our lives and everything in our lives. But when we're not, and no, I'm not Pollyanna in saying that we're going to be joyful, every day, all the time. No, that's not going to happen, because we have things that we need to clear. However, we can stay more and more in that place until we are totally in that vibration of joy. But which, in order to do that, it helps to have support. Okay, so as I said, you don't have to make a decision about this right now. But what I would recommend that you do is, if I am offering to 10 people who are on this call or hear this webinar in the next, month of for the month of July, but the first 10 people who email me at Catherine@guidedchange.com and just say, I want to have a Joyful You session. They're free, and what I'll do is you'll send me an email, and I'll contact you back and say, okay, when can we jump on the phone? And I'll take you through a process which will help you to identify what is it that you want. What are the negative things that are getting in the way, and that whether it's beliefs or fears or doubts, and then to create a plan for you so you can start to shift those and really get out of that negativity and into that positive zone where you can be much more productive, happier, joyful, more loving, and really attract all that you want to have in your life. So if you'd like to have a Joyful You session, then just shoot me an email right now. You can go to your email program, shoot me an email. I'll get it. I'll contact you tomorrow or in the next few days, and we'll set up a time. Okay, so it's a fun time. It's a fun session. It's easy, and I'm happy to support the first 10 people who contact me. Okay, so before we have time here, which is great. I'm going to before I stop or pause for questions, let me share this next screen, because it'll bring it back to a really happy place. It's just, again, nature, something beautiful. This quote by, I'm going to crucify this name, Ritu Gatori. Blessed are they who can laugh at themselves, for they will never cease to be amused. And that is just such a powerful statement. Blessed are they who can laugh at themselves, for they will never cease to be amused. And I'm blessed. And I've been that way for a number of years now. When I take various, I go out in nature, I take some of my little stones, I start playing with my inner child, and I just start laughing, and I crack myself up, and Larry Shiva does something funny, and he cracks me up, and we're able to stay in that place of lightheartedness. So again, if you would like a Joyful You session, then just send me an email at Catherine@guidedchange.com. But anybody that's here live, you have any questions or comments about what I had to share tonight? Anything you want to say? Mark shaking his head.
No, I'm not at this particular time. I mean, I'm just listening right now. The phone people haven't been saying much, so I was trying to give people an opportunity. Oh, and Melvina had left for a while. It looks like she's back now.
Yeah, she's back now, right? And that's fine. And the different phone people were trying to get in and out, and I'm not quite sure why they didn't.
It looked like they were trying to get in because it kept shifting to them.
Exactly. It did shift to them. So they tried several times, and I'm not quite sure why that didn't happen, but hopefully I will know who signed up so I can check in with them.
Mhm.
Okay.
The
So
only comment that I would have to say is that I really already agree with so much of what you're saying already. And nature is completely my guiding force when I need to be balanced again. That's why I like to live in a really beautiful place. I can go to the ocean or up into a mountain, very easily. It's really stabilizing for me. So.
and that's exactly how I am, which is why I'd like to live more in an area like you, where you are, because it is so powerful, and we need nature, and nature nurtures us, absolutely, and it does. It's just, and I think even nature, when it's like, say, the Columbia, the river is just really running full force, and you just see it like take it away, or you're paddling it, or if people do that, I'm not quite sure. But you realize the power and the strength of the river.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
And also, I think the other piece about a river or any water that's moving is you get the sense that things are in a flow, things are in a cycle, that the water ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how negativity is, or things, the negativity, it will come and it will go, and it's always going to be there, but it's just how we handle it that makes the biggest difference. And so your go-to place is nature, and that's definitely one of mine. And it makes a big difference, but sometimes I can't. So that's why sending blessings or some of the other things really makes a difference, because that I can do wherever I am. Mm-hmm. And I think, and that's something that everybody can do wherever they are. Okay. Anybody else?
And also, I'm trying to connect with really positive people is really important also. And for me as well.
Not just for you, Mark, for everybody. Yeah. Connecting with positive, because we don't realize how other people's energy can bring us down. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And before we know it, and also it's not only that, but there are people that I would call energy drains or energy vampires. And people who are empathetic and someone who's sensitive, like you are, being an artist, they can pick up on that and they feed off of it. Mm-hmm. Right? And so this would be a completely different program, but cutting that energetic cord between ourselves and those people is a really important thing to do. Mm-hmm. Because they will try to do that. Or like one of the things I do, and I'll get to it in my bonuses in a moment, is there's an energetic tool where you literally put protection around yourself. And you around your home or wherever, and you just have that energetic protection from an angel or an archangel, or a grounding cord. All these different things really make a difference in protecting us. Mm-hmm. So, but staying with, because positive people, it's wonderful. You're uplifted, you start laughing, you start joking around, and everybody's uplifted. I mean, I can remember this is one time many, many moons ago, again, when I was a school librarian, and something would happen and I was annoyed and frustrated or angry about something that had happened at school. And so this wonderful little cheerful, the happiest group of first graders I think I've ever worked with. And they came in and they sat down like little angels. I didn't even say anything. They just did it. Their teacher said, "Surprise, Miss Walters." And so they did. And they all sat down beautifully, and they're smiling and waiting to see, did I notice how beautifully they came in? And so I comment, and I said, "Guys, something happened and I'm really upset right now. Does anybody have a joke?" And so sure enough, you get about half the class raises their hand. I have one. And so I just took a few minutes to I literally used them to have them help me shift my mood to the positive by having them tell me little first grade jokes. And it made all the difference in the world. So it is really important to do that. Oh, there's Mubina back again. Now we see her.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been here all along, but
yeah, I know you have. But sometimes you were not like right behind the camera, and that's fine. You heard it all. So anything that you want to comment on, Mubina?
No, I guess I've done a lot of work, so a lot of this was information that I guess I already know, but it was a good reminder to hear it again and to realize that we can be in the driver's seat to to choose how we want to feel and what we want to focus on. And so, no, it was good. Thank you.
Oh, good. And you're absolutely right, because I think that's what we forget about, is that we do have the power. We have it's our power. We get to choose. I mean, I say this often. It's like, and I had to learn this, that joy is a choice. Abundance is a choice. Being in, love is a choice. Self-love is a choice. And when you really start to see that you have power over your choices, and that is your actual power, that is our free will, and then that is one of our greatest powers, is to choose what's best for ourselves. It makes all the difference, because we can start to look at, like, what am I doing here? Where are my thoughts going? What am I saying to myself? Well, why am I doing that? Well, stop. And I will literally, one of the tools I often tell people is just like, put your hand up like it's a stop sign. Stop. And then, what do I choose to believe, or what do I choose to say to myself instead? Because our subconscious mind is so powerful, and yet it's that part of ourselves that if we don't work, we can shift it. That's why I like to work with people for a year, because over that length of time can really help them shift so many of those negative beliefs, or limiting beliefs. They're not always negative, but they're limiting, and to not just be, to be even greater, to be the most expansive, the greatest part of ourselves, the greatest expression, the fullest expression, the most authentic expression of ourselves that we can be. And so, because so many of us settle for like halfway, like that's good enough, and it's not. We get to be, especially as these energies on our planet are changing, it's now is the time for us to be the fullest expression of who we are. And that is us being in our joy. Because joy, actually, I don't know if you know, either of you know, or anybody on this call knows the book, you probably do, Power versus Force. Have you ever heard of it? That's the title. It's Dr. somebody, and I'm blanking out the name. I could go over my bookshelf and get it. David something, I believe. But at any rate, he was a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and a medical doctor, and he measured all of the emotions that we have, going from grief and anger and shame and love and joy and enlightenment and all of that. And he made up a scale from 0 to 1,000, and 20 is what the lowest named emotion is shame. Okay, when we're in that place of shame, we just literally want to cringe and hide, and and it's just so negative, it's so low. Anger is 100. Most people, he found, vibrated about 220. All right, where love vibrates at 500, and joy vibrates at 600. You may also be familiar with who is the Dr. Emoto, who put the words in front of the water crystals and took photographs of them, right? And a word like hate would just be really dense and small and not very beautiful at all, where the word love would just be this most expansive photograph of these water crystals. And so it's showing that, they're showing you can measure energy, you can measure positive and negative emotions. And we want to, my goal is to help people get to the highest vibration that they can and be in that state as much as possible. And when they're not, to shift the gears back to that higher, so shift back up in the 5th gear or whatever, rather than staying and having to work so hard at the lower levels. But to really get up into those higher vibrations where life is much easier, where from there, like Mark, you were mentioning, you automatically attract more positive people into your life. You attract more abundance into your life automatically. We attract more of the experiences that we want to have when we're vibrating at this higher vibration. And the highest Dr. Hawkins, David Hawkins, is the name of the author of that book. And I'll just point out, that was my subconscious mind. I let it go, said, you'll remember. And sure enough, as I'm not thinking about it, it pops in. So just, we all have had experiences of that. And so I just point out how you can utilize your subconscious mind even more. But at any rate, Dr. Hawkins, found that people the great beings who are enlightened, they vibrate, like the Dalai Lama, vibrate at 700. And their power to uplift others is so huge. And so that's what we want to be able to have. And I'm sure, Mark, as you do your artwork and you have a high vibration, you can feel that your artwork uplifts more people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And
I
so,
agree. Yeah.
yeah, and so it's that ability that the more we can stay positive, the more we can help others.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So again, I know you guys, if you'd like to have anybody that's, I mean, I'm going to close this down pretty shortly, but unless you would like to hear, would you like to hear some of the laughter and humor quotes that I have? And anybody listening to this, if you haven't already told me that you would like to have a Joyful You session, just go to your email and email me at Catherine@guidedchange.com. But Mel Brooks said this: humor is just another defense against the universe. Alan Klein said, humor can alter any situation and help us cope at the very instant we are laughing. So good. I can remember hearing, again, no TV or don't listen to the news so much, but I knew almost immediately that Robin Williams had committed suicide because I was at the gym and someone had, got a text on their cell phone. But Robin Williams said, comedy is acting out optimism. Bill Cosby said, through humor, you can soften some of the worst blows that life delivers. And once you find laughter, no matter how painful your situation might be, you can survive it. And I'll just share a few more. Maya Angelou wrote, I don't trust anyone who doesn't laugh. And these are two of my favorites from Irma Bombeck. Laughter rises out of tragedy when you need it the most, and rewards you for your courage. She also said, there is a thin line that separates laughter and pain, comedy and tragedy, humor and hurt. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your participation, those of you that were here live. Thank you all of you that are going to listen to the recording. Again, you can email me at Catherine@guidedchange.com. Tell me you want a Joyful You session, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you. Many blessings, love and joy to all of you, and namaste. And I'm going to close the call and stop the recording. So I'm going to stop the screen share. And bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.